earlier about the Pontiac fight. It was a few years ago, back when Governor Ryan was a governor. We went through a fight over Sheridan, a fight which unfortunately we lost at the time, but fortunately we were able to get reversed when we got a new governor. We got Sheridan reopened. We don't want to have to go through that with Dwight. We don't want it to close down and then reopen. We want to keep it open. And I think the lessons we have learned from our previous fights would stand us in good stead in this fight. Number one, is to make the point to the elected officials, both those who represent this district and those from throughout the state, that this facility plays a vital role in this community. It's not only the 400 plus employees and their families who are concerned about the fate of Dwight, but everybody in this community is concerned about his fate. We've heard from the economic development people, $40 million would be taken, over $40 million would be taken out of the economy were Dwight to close. It will not only affect the people who work at Dwight, but it will affect a lot of other people, even other people who will lose their jobs if Dwight closes. So we have to keep that front and center. Now the truth of the matter is, if there were a private employer in Dwight who were saying that they were going to close down their business and lay 400 people off, not only would we be here tonight, the governor would be here tonight with his checkbook to write a check to try to keep the place open. Well, the governor isn't here tonight, and he doesn't dare to come here tonight because he's made a proposal that universally in this community is rejected. We've got to make sure that that message goes back to him and goes back to the legislative leaders, that this community stands in solidarity with keeping Dwight open. That's how we've been successful in other fights that we've waged, by making sure that politicians knew that the full community stood behind keeping those facilities open. And the other lessons that we've learned from the past is we're not going to keep Dwight open by saying, well, keep Dwight open but close that facility. Keep Dwight open but close this facility. The truth of the matter is that all of the facilities that the governor is trying to close in his proposed budget need to be kept open. None of them make good policy sense. And we have to remember that if we want to keep Dwight open, we have to have 60 votes in the House of Representatives, and we have to have 30 votes in the Senate. Now, we know we have the votes of the elected officials who are here. They've all said that they are committed to keeping Dwight open. But their votes alone won't get us to the 60 that we need in the House or the 30 that we need in the Senate. Now, if you look at the other facilities that are slated for closing in Jacksonville, and Murfreesboro, and Joliet, and Rockford, and Tinley Park, you add in the representatives and senators from those areas whose votes we need to keep Dwight open, they're going to want their facilities to be open as well, because they don't want to happen to their community what we don't want to happen to our community here. So we have to make sure that we don't make the argument, don't close us, close them down. That's a losing argument. We need every prison bed that we can keep open. We need the mental health services that are provided to the mentally ill, and we need the services that are provided to the developmentally disabled. We need all of those services, and we need to stand together with the people in those communities to make sure that their communities aren't devastated either. We went through this fight just last fall. There were 7 facilities that the governor had proposed closing. We said, no, it doesn't make sense to close those facilities. And we had meetings like this in communities throughout the state. We had the COGMA hearings that were referred to earlier this evening in gymnasiums like this in every corner of the state. And in each of those hearings, we made the case that we need to keep these facilities open. And what we heard, well, we know you want to keep these facilities open, but there isn't enough money. There's not enough money in the budget. And there wasn't enough money in the budget. The budgets had already passed. And we said, well, what you need is a supplemental appropriation. You have to have a supplemental appropriation, otherwise the facilities are going to close. And I must say, there were elected officials who said, yeah, we're for keeping the facilities open, but we're not for a supplemental appropriation. Well, you can't have one without the other. And at the end of the day, we were successful in getting a supplemental appropriation, and we were successful in keeping all 7 of those facilities open. Now we have a situation where the budget this year is even worse than the budget was last year. And one of the speakers earlier alluded to the rising cost of Medicaid, and it is rising. But in fact, the governor's budget proposes and assumes that they're going to cut $2.7 billion, 20% of the Medicaid budget. That's $2.7 billion, that's with a B, dollars out of that budget. And even with that, they're talking about closing these 14 facilities. Now, what the governor claims, and not every claim he makes is accurate, but for the sake of this discussion, let's presume that it is. He's saying that the state will save $100 million if it closes all of the 14 facilities that he's got slated for closure. $100 million, and we're doing this because we just don't have the money. Well, the truth of the matter is that the General Assembly went back to Springfield last fall, at the end of November, to do one thing only, one order of business that day, and that was to cut taxes in the state of Illinois, most of which went to businesses. The biggest one went to the Chicago Board of Trade. They alone got a tax break of $100 million. $100 million. Enough money to keep every one of the 14 facilities that the governor is now trying to close could have kept them. That money would keep them all open. And it's not like the Chicago Board of Trade needed that money. They made $900 million in profit the year before. A company that makes over $900 million in profits doesn't need a tax break, but the members of the General Assembly and the governor chose to give them a tax break. Well, now we're $100 million short. We're short $100 million. It reminds me of the story of the kid who was before the judge and said, "Judge, please have mercy on me, I'm an orphan." The judge said, "Yeah, you're an orphan because you killed your parents." So we're not going to have any mercy on members of the General Assembly. The governor said, "We don't have any money." You gave it away. You gave it to somebody who doesn't need it. Give it back. Give it back. Give it back. So our members who work at Dwight, the governor came to our union last year and said, "You know, the state's got a problem. We're in a fiscal crisis. You have a pay increase due. We'd like you to defer the pay increase." He ended up, not getting it at all, and we're fighting about that too, but that's another story. He said, "Would you defer your pay increase?" And we actually voted on it. We would be willing to do that to help the state out. And believe me, the people at Dwight don't make as much as the chairman of the board of the Chicago Board of Trade, who makes several $1 million a year. We made that deferral. Why doesn't the governor and the member of the General Assembly say to the Chicago Board of Trade, defer your tax increase and use that $100 million, keep Dwight open, keep Joliet Juvenile open, keep Wilkesboro open, keep Singer open, keep Henry open, keep those services to the people who need them. That's what we need to be saying. Because you will hear a lot of that when you talk to legislators and you talk to the governor. If you get to talk to the governor, you'll hear, we agree it doesn't make sense to close Dwight, but what are we going to do? We don't have the money. Well, go and get it. Go and get it from the company that can afford it, the company that made almost $1 billion in profits last year that you gave an extra $100 million to because you wanted to be a nice guy, for whatever reason they want to do that. No, we say no. Don't tell us you don't have the money when you're giving money like that away to people who don't need it. You have the money, and we're going to insist that you use it to keep the Dwight open. So as we go forward, I'm hoping that the members of the General Assembly who are with us here tonight We hope that when they go back to Springfield, they tell their leaders a couple of things. One, they tell their leaders, we're not voting for any budget that doesn't have Dwight and these other facilities in it. Two, we hope that they will go to the other members of their caucus. Each party has its caucus. Go to other members of the caucus with whom they have relationships. And people who are going to be coming to them for votes and say, you want my vote for some of your bills? Make sure you don't vote for any budget that doesn't have the Dwight Correctional Center in it. If the people in this district stand up and do that, and if the people in the other districts where these other 14 facilities are being slated for closure, if they all do that, if they tell their leaders, we're not voting for a budget that doesn't have these facilities in it. If they tell the governor, don't come to us for votes on any of your bills unless you're going to put these facilities in it. If they do that, we will have the same outcome that we had last fall. Like last fall, we got a supplemental budget. This spring, we will get a budget that has the Dwight Correctional Center in it. That is our bottom line. That is what we must have. That is what we will have. If we stick together, if we fight together, if we stay together as one community, the Dwight Correctional Center will be open when that budget passes. Thank you all very much. And thank you for being here.